Hello and welcome to this edition of Exclusive Interview, coming to you from the studios of 84 TV Radio, Abuja, Nigeria. My name is Stanley Bentu. Nigeria is struggling with the question of how to use its abundant resources to achieve equitable economic growth, effective service delivery, and social cohesion. One of the major causes of this development blockade is the lack of openness, transparency, and accountability in governance. This makes the mission of Open Government Partnership simple and straightforward. Create strategic ways for civil society and reformers in governments to join forces and commit to reforms that open up government, and together ensure that our public institutions work for citizens and not for political office holders. Take a look at this report.
According to Dr. Otive Igbuzo, the Executive Director, African Center for Leadership Strategy and Development, LSC Center, Abuja, the 4 key areas of open government are transparency, open data, accountability, responsive government, citizen participation, and the use of technology. Research and experience show that the programs to achieve open government principles must be carefully planned and implemented, otherwise the required results will not be achieved. First and foremost, it is important to focus on both tactical and strategic approaches. Tactical approaches are bounded, localized, and information-led, while strategic approaches bolster enabling environment for collective action, scale up citizen engagement beyond the local arena, and attempt to bolster governmental capacity to respond. Citizens' engagement will be the difference marker for the success of open government partnership in Nigeria. Citizens and citizen groups need to advocate and campaign for adherence to the principles of open government partnership that a government has voluntarily signed.
Now, joining us to talk about open government partnership, we have Dr. Joe ABAH, who is the country director of DAI. He's also public affairs analyst par excellence, and he joins me this morning. Dr. Joe, you are very much welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Stanley. It's a real pleasure to be here.
All right, well, here's the interesting thing. A lot of people do not know about open government partnerships. It's not something that you find on the front page news. So why is that, and exactly what is it?
Open government is essentially, what the name says. It's making government more open, more accessible to citizens, enabling citizens to understand better the workings of government, giving them the opportunity to ask questions, and also including civil society in the way that governance is carried out. And a number of countries, well over 70 countries around the world, have adopted these principles and have set up what is called the Open Government Partnership, which is a group of countries that are committed to openness in governance. And Nigeria became a member, I believe, in 2016.
2016.
And,
however, it's probably worked a little bit better with the federal government. When it comes down to the state level, we're doing not so good. Okay.
Well, a number of states have actually signed up to the Open Government Partnership because normally it's more popularly at national level across the world. There is a subnational component, which I believe Kaduna State was the first to sign up to. A number of other states have since signed up. But
16
yes. But I agree with you that 16 out of 36 is not the best it could be. Many more states could sign up, and I hope they do. But you made a point earlier about people not hearing so much about this, and I'm not sure that is too much of a problem, because the issues around open governance are the issues around governance themselves. So issues of transparency, accountability, anti-corruption. So long as people are debating those issues and focusing on them, the open government label itself is not necessarily it is not necessarily a disadvantage that people are not talking about it in the press.
I've seen a pattern, Doctor, and this is that on the federal level, maybe there's still a lot to be desired, but we're still not doing as well as we should be, but we're doing much better than we are on the subnational level. And this is why I think it's important, because we have lots of state governors that can do whatever they like, can budget the way they like. They're rarely ever questioned by their state houses of assembly. They don't have to account. And most times, even when there are funds that they have to account to, if you look at the convictions where we've had state governors convicted, it's hardly to do with allocations to states and more to do with maybe funds that were special intervention funds that were given by the federal government. That means that we don't have enough accountability at the subnational level. How can we improve that?
That is actually already improving quite dramatically. The World Bank has a program through which, if a state is more open and accountable, it actually just gets cash in reward. So it's called the SIFTAS program. And very many states are able to access that fund by just being more open and more transparent. So there's currently a program through which, if states can readjust their 2020 budget in line of COVID-19, consult with citizens about what those adjustments should be. So what should we cut down, what should we add, and what should we stop? And make all of that open and transparent for everybody to see. The state will get $5 million. And so there's a real incentive now, beyond just preaching that, oh, open government is a good thing and transparency is a good thing. There's a real incentive now for people to be much more open, much more transparent. And very many states are already doing so, because the SIFTAS program requires you to be open with regards to the contracts you issue. Anybody you're owing, any contractor you're owing more than, say, 20 million naira must be on the website listed for what you're owing them for. The debt position of the state must be clear and open on the website. The quarterly budget reports. So a lot of the things that the Open Government Partnership stands for is the same thing that the World Bank is now incentivizing people to do. And so I'm very, very confident that would improve dramatically very soon.
How can we improve transparent tax revenue reporting?
I think the use of technology is one very good way to do that, because if you don't use technology, then people are setting up all sorts of task forces, they are printing all sorts of receipts. The money doesn't actually come into the treasury. But if you use technology, cashless banking and enabling people to pay online, then it's much easier to track. And that's why my own state government, for instance, the ABAH state government, is setting up a dashboard with which everybody can see every single naira going into the state every day on a daily basis live. And I think that's the kind of thing that can improve transparency and accountability in revenue collection.
Here's something that you've worked on some time ago with the federal government of Nigeria: open contracting and licensing. How far have we come? Are you encouraged by what you're seeing right now, and what are your thoughts moving forward?
I am encouraged, but of course there's a lot more to do. I'm encouraged that the Bureau of Public Procurement now has a national open contracting database which promotes the open contracting data standards. I'm encouraged that the National Action Plan, the second OGP National Action Plan for Nigeria, includes a commitment to open contracting and the open contracting database. But yes, there's a lot more to do. But I think we're beginning to make the right kinds of commitments and put in the right kinds of activities needed to improve the transparency of contracts. And incidentally, it's also
pushback, because some time ago, there was a story, I think, published by Premium Times about how legislators are using shadow companies or shell companies to get contracts through parastatals on which they may have oversight. And then so I think the racket, according to the newspaper, is they register these companies, and then these companies register as contractors, and then to curry favor maybe for certain approvals, they get these contracts, and this is how they have access to these so-called special funds or community development funds. So how can this open contracting tackle the problem?
It's a very difficult issue, and I'll be dishonest if I tell you that I haven't heard those allegations, even while I was in government. The National Assembly members would always say, we don't assess the bids. We're not part of assessing the bids. We don't award any contract. All of that is done by the ministry or the agency, nothing to do with us. That is what they will always say. But it is not inconceivable that there is some pressure or even collusion in some cases. The good thing about the open contracting database and the register of beneficial owners, which is also one of the commitments under the OGP, is that at least you know who is getting what and you know who is doing what. So the register of beneficial owners takes it beyond what we currently have with the Corporate Affairs Commission, where you just have a company and it has a list of directors, and you don't know who is actually behind those list of directors. You don't know who is benefiting from the company. And so the move to having a public register of beneficial owners will sort of lift the veil behind that, link it to, say, bank verification numbers, and you can see who is actually getting the benefit of that company, beyond the people who are named as directors. So that's one way in which it can be tracked.
Very interesting thing I like to look at, participatory budgeting. That is, citizens actually contributing to the budget cycle. How can we achieve that?
I think it's a very important thing.
Do the citizens even care enough?
Oh, they do. They absolutely do. The bigger question is, do they get an opportunity to actually engage in the budget?
And before you answer that, which is, I just want you to listen to this, which is an analysis that was published recently, that there's a fear that open data will only benefit those who can understand the information, which is typically those at the top of socioeconomic hierarchy. Although in theory, open data is meant to benefit the average citizen, who is meant to feel more connected with their government's democratic processes, but the information must be composed in a way that is accessible. Most times the average citizen can't even understand the budget or how it works or what it means. So how can they participate?
I think that's a fair assessment. It is not an insurmountable problem. I agree completely that the budget must be presented in a way that is acceptable and understandable, because not everyone is interested in finding out what is recurrent, what is capital, what is overhead, what is environment, what are all of these things. Not everybody is interested in that, but everybody is interested in knowing when the road they take to their village will be done. Everybody is interested in knowing whether the funds recovered from the ABAH loot will be used for A or for B. Everybody is interested in that. Everybody is interested in whether we are going into recession and what the budget is likely to be, and which things will be done and which things will not be done. It's always been my view that government doesn't do enough, to explain the budget to people and to encourage them to participate in its development. Having said that, a number of
break now.
Okay.
But very quickly, can you tell us how can we get these budgets more understood by the general public so that they can be interested in all of these projects?
The Budget Office of the Federation has produced a Citizen's Guide to the Budget, which sets out in very, very easy to follow terms how the budget is crafted and what it means. A lot more needs to be done to ensure that many more people have access to that information in a way that they can understand it.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we'll take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll be talking about the Stephen Oransanye report and how that can help make governance cheaper. Or can it, really? Don't go away.
It's very significant because it brings a connect between the governed and those who have given them the responsibility of governance. In terms of every year you have some form of budget, which is a plan of action where funds come in and funds are disbursed for the good of the people. So it is a social contract. And it is only proper for the government and the governance strategy to be an open one, whereby the citizens can periodically act as ombudspersons to check what is government doing that is proper. Is it in line with what we agreed on? Is it in line with what, after we had agreed, you wrote in the budget and defended in the National or the House of Assembly? And how far have you gone? Are there challenges? So you get a feedback. It's a give and it's a take issue. That's why I'm a proponent of open governance. And the key reason for open governance is it helps the government keep track of the social contract, the promise and the agreement between the people that put them in place by voting and the people who put their trust in them to handle the resources they have and to carry out the process of governance in all ramifications. The Oransanye recommendations was predicated on the fact that most of those MDAs that were set up were politically set up for giving food to the boys. Our democratic sector is practice is really quite interesting. For me, it's overbloated. If I were a beneficiary, I've benefited a bit of it, but I still felt it was a bit overbloated. The burden is too much on government now. It's too much on the economy right now. Industries have packed up because of COVID-19. Private jobs, small and medium scale enterprises, businesses are packed up because there's really nothing. Level of income, standard of income is already messed up. So we really have to sit down and recalculate. Those parastatals at a point in time were done again because of the exigency of the situation. Governance is a dynamic thing. So as you see, and it is situational, as you see, then you determine.
Open government partnership is very important, very significant, very desirable, given the fact that Nigeria over the decades have had challenge of opacity in governance. People do not know what is going on, what is the budget of states, how is the money generated, what are the projects that have been done. Things are just done in an hush-hush manner, no significant feedback to the populace. This has been the bane before Nigeria signed on to open government partnership. It's just sheer waste of time. My own opinion of Oransanye report, which everybody agreed was going to help reduce the cost of governance when it was done initially. If we are able to fight corruption effectively, I believe to a very large extent, we will not even need to merge any ministry, because every ministry, commissions, agency you create, you are employing people. You are taking more people out of the street.
Welcome back. We've been having an interesting chat with Dr. Joe ABAH, who is the country director of DAI. Public policy, very important in Nigeria, very essential also to public development. And right now I want to talk about the Stephen Oransanye report. And let me start here. In summary, The Oransanye report establishes as follows, which was the report which was established to reduce the cost of governance. There are 541 federal government parastatals, commissions, and agencies, both statutory and non-statutory. 263 of the statutory agencies should be reduced to 161. This is in summary what was recommended. 38 agencies should be abolished, 52 agencies should be merged, and 14 should revert back to departments and ministries. Now, I know you've probably digested this report. What are some of those agencies that you feel are redundant, and how can we merge them? Is it even possible? Because some of these agencies are created by law. So it's not something that you can reverse by an executive order.
Let me start with your last question, which is, can it even be done? Absolutely, yes, it can. The executive just needs to take an executive bill to the National Assembly and it will be done. And it doesn't even have to take individual executive bills for each individual agency. It can have a reduction of cost of governance bill and list all the agencies that it wants to abolish or merge, and the National Assembly will simply pass that. The challenge is that successive governments have lacked the political will to implement that report. And the report is now 8 years old. The Bureau of Public Service Reforms that I used to be Director General of has since reviewed that report twice to bring it up to date, because the report that is 8 years old, a number of things have changed. And so the BPSR has done that review twice, submitted it to government to say, okay, these are areas in which government should still proceed, and these are areas it should reconsider. And so the issue is not the technical feasibility of doing it. It is technically feasible to do. It's whether it is politically feasible. That's really the issue.
So when you served in the BPR, what were some of the pushbacks that you got, especially from the political angle?
There were some errors in the original Oransanye report. For instance, some regulatory agencies were misclassified as professional associations, like the Nigerian ABAH Association, but some of them, like the body regulating dentistry, regulating veterinary medicine, are regulators of their professional governing bodies. And so they appealed and said, this part of the report isn't correct, and they showed their law to prove that. So there were some that came up with credible appeals, which government considered. There was also, of course, pushback from the affected agencies themselves, which is not surprising. I mean, nobody wants to be abolished and thrown out. The most difficult one, in my view, is that the Oransanye report enumerated 541 agencies as at 2012. As at the 2019 budget, we were making provision for 1,100 agencies and federal bodies. And so rather than a reduction, you saw a doubling. And that is, so a lot, and if you look at what happens in the National Assembly, there's virtually no law that is passed that doesn't come with some new agency. There's virtually none. And no agency is ever abolished or merged. We just keep creating new ones. The politicians see it as having, as they say, attracted development to their area. And so even where there's a university, there's a polytechnic, there's a college of education, somebody will still bring a law to establish a university of education, or a university of agriculture, a university of this or that. And it just keeps growing. So there isn't really that political will to do this. My hope is that the downturn in the economy and government resources would force would force it to take a serious look at the report.
Well, we saw the current government take a lean towards that in the face of the coronavirus economic crisis, where President Muhammadu Buhari said that, okay, his government was going to take another look at this. And I'm looking at the trend, even starting from 2014, when this report was finally submitted, and we saw the former President Goodluck Jonathan set up a committee to come up with a white paper. But this was just a year before an election. And so it was probably unlikely that he was going to take on some of the more controversial aspects of these reforms when he was hoping to get a second term. So I'm imagining that he probably thought, okay, let me go for this, win the second term, and then maybe I can start to implement. By the time the Buhari administration came, there was an economic crisis, and so maybe they felt it was not the wrong time. What is it about the conflict between statesmanship and politics? And why do our Nigerian leaders always go for politics as opposed to statesmanship? Because they're not necessarily the same thing, are they?
I have no competence in politics, so that is an area that I can't comment fully on. But the point you make about the trajectory is really, really important, because the report was actually submitted in 2012. And we didn't get a government white paper in response to it until 2014, which is 2 whole years. But even then, the report was far broader than the summary that you've read out. It talked about abolishing some agencies, yes. It talked about merging some, yes. But it also talked about having management and staff audits in a number of organizations. I think about 35 organizations, just knowing how many people work there, what do they actually do. He talked about reducing the size of boards in a number of agencies and consolidating some of them. And it also talked about commercializing some agencies. So if you take as an example, we are paying for NTA out of our budget. We are not paying for this studio. We are not paying for this station out of the federal budget. Why should we be paying for NTA? Why should we be paying for FRCN? They generate enough revenue. In fact, they generate more revenue than any other TV or radio house in Nigeria. Do we really need an office in each of the 36 states with the advent of technology now? So those are actually things that, regardless of the political sensitivities of mergers or abolition, government could actually have done. It could actually have done all of those things, and it would have made a lot of difference. We budget in the region of 7 billion every year for NTA. That amount of money can make a lot of difference in education, can make a lot of difference in health, it can make a lot of difference in infrastructure. The fact that we are not doing it is in the realm of politics.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that. Quite interesting there. Before we wrap up, I want to talk to you about your social media life. You seem to be very vibrant, have a lot of young followers. First and foremost, you have boldly posted on your page, "I do not sit on the fence. I am the fence." What do you mean by that? And I've seen that you've been accused of sitting on the fence very often. How do you feel when you hear that?
I feel that extremism is not necessarily a good thing in any sphere of life at all.
Do you see young people as being extreme in their views when they urge you to sit on one side or the other, as opposed to just analyzing and giving the facts as they are?
I see inexperience, actually, among many young people, and I don't blame them for it. I mean, you can't give what you don't have. I've worked on issues of governance and public policy for 34 years. I know that at the top, there's no difference. The political family in Nigeria is one family, and that's why they're able to move seamlessly from APC to PDP and back to APC, back to PDP. The younger people don't seem to know that. And that's why nobody at the top attacks me, because I work with all of them. I advise all of them. I don't have an issue with all of them. we each have our strengths. For some people, their strength is being able to go out and campaign and win elections and all of that, and that's not my strength. My strength is as a technocrat to be able to seek better governance, regardless of who is in power. That is the thing. So a lot of people find it really difficult to comprehend that today I could be praising the government and tomorrow I could be criticizing it. And today I could agree with the opposition, tomorrow I could criticize it.
If we are issue focused, we should be able to do. We should be able to look at our governments and say, hey, you're doing a good job on this, and maybe not so great a job on that. But it seems as if the attitude is, once you support someone, everything he does is right, everything that the other person does is wrong. And that's faulty thinking, don't you think?
It is, but I think it's the stage at which our democracy is, because our democracy is still personality and cult-based. So you either like Buhari or you don't. And you either like Atiku or you don't. And you either like whoever it is or you don't. The thinking that, yes, there are a number of things that Buhari does well, there are also a number of things he doesn't do well. People feel it's disloyal when you say that, but as a citizen, my loyalty is to the Constitution and to the country, not to the individual.
Not to the individual. Thank you very much, Dr. Joe ABAH. I wish we could go on, but unfortunately we have run out of time. It's a pleasure having you, and we look forward to hosting you again.
Thank you, Stanley. Real pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure and enlightening to speak to Dr. Joe ABAH, and quite a number of things were learned, including this. The bill to reduce the cost of governance is needed now more than ever before. This bill has a long list of agencies that could be merged when the National Assembly passes it. But all of that would not be possible without the political will to implement the Stephen Oransanye report. And that is the issue as well as the challenge at hand. It's technically feasible to implement the Oransanye report, but the question remains whether it's convenient for politicians to do so. Our government could have reduced recurrent expenditures in our budgets and saved money that could be diverted to other more critical areas of development. And that's it on Exclusive Interview for today. Join us again next time. Until then, thanks for stopping by.